There's very few moments in life that life allows you to learn fast. I think we have to put everything on the table and learn. And of course, you could make a lot of mistakes and you could throw money to fix mistakes. So I became a very lazy entrepreneur, very undisciplined entrepreneur. And that got bite me really, really bad in 2008. Because instead of doing the right thing and figure out how to give value to the world and the world pay you for the value, it's easier to convince one bank or one investor to give you money and be lazy. The best way to do it is figure out how to give value to the world and the world will give you money. So we opened a mortgage bank in Austin to finance undocumented Hispanics in the US. Through a friend of mine in San Diego, we got a line of credit, $500 million, to finance mortgages for undocumented Hispanics. And that's what we did. So we were the only ones in Texas at that moment giving loans to undocumented Hispanics. And we just began growing really fast. In 2 years, we had 120 employees, offices in Dallas, Houston, San Antonio, and Austin. And we raised $4 or $5 million. We were doing great. And one day we got a call from Goldman and said, no more. Like, what do you mean no more? I have 120 employees. I have 100 loans on the pipeline. He said, no more. And by the way, the one you put in yesterday, go and get them out.
About what date? When was that?
This was 2007.
Yeah.
So we got the call around June or July, summer 2007. Okay. Indeed, I ended up shutting everything down in August 2007. And when I went to my investors and said, hey, this time to shut down, we lost all the money. Everyone's like, what do you mean? The economy is doing great. And I was like, oh no, the subprime got destroyed. But no one had a sense of what was happening on the subprime, on the prime market. Yep. And then when everything happened in 2008, they called me and said, like, why you didn't told us? Like, I went under. Of course I told you. It was really rough. But coming to the US, I really realized, first, I have become an undisciplined entrepreneur. I was so lucky on the first one, and it was la-la land working on the internet. It was not the real economy. And of course, you could make a lot of mistakes and you could throw money to fix mistakes. So I became a very lazy entrepreneur, very undisciplined entrepreneur. And that got bite me really, really bad in 2008. And second, in Mexico, I had a really, really high social capital that I did not have in the US. In Mexico, if I could get to anyone in the country, it takes me a week. And I could sit down with almost anyone, through friends or colleagues or whatever. In the US, I have no idea who to call, and not even how to open a door. And that really was very hard. I discounted how easy it was for me in Mexico compared to do it in the US. And that's when one day I called my investors, said, hey, I think we shut down. We need to shut down. Everyone's going to lose all their capital. I did a meeting. I told everyone, hey, the $5 or so million we've raised, it's gone. I explained the situation. And everyone, there was a lot of questions and discussion. Everyone said, okay, great. And I said, but wait, we have offices and loans and all these kind of things. For us to shut everything down, it's around $1 million. And everyone said, like, I'm not putting the money. Are you? No, it's your problem.
Oh, you mean they were all your buddies when things were going up, but when things were going down, like everybody runs for the hills.
And as investors said, hey, I put my money. That's what I was willing to risk. I lost it, fine. But the operation was your responsibility. So I remember going back home to my wife and said, I lost all my money. I'm $1 million in debt because I have to pay all the lease and everything back. And by the way, our visa was tied to the company, so we shut down the company, we need to go back. And in a couple of weeks' time, we were back in Mexico and had to get a job just to pay for my kids' school. But it was pretty rough. I remember I woke up many nights sweating cold, crying at 2, 3 o'clock in the morning. It was rough. After you've been successful, I had a couple of $1 million in the bank and all that at that age. And then at 32 or so, I went completely under. And then you see the other part of entrepreneurship, that it's a really tough, the other part of entrepreneurship.
So Daniel, you talk about being undisciplined and kind of riding high, riding the markets high. Everything was going well. I feel like everything you touched was turning to gold. The complacency that sets in, I think it's easy to have happen. When particularly markets are running hot, similar to where we are right now. Yep. Markets running hot for various reasons. Your company had to shut down, not because of your lack of operations, but the market turned. So in hindsight, what discipline would have helped you to deal with that in a better way?
So because there was a lot of money, I took a lot of debt. I was undisciplined on a lot of the metrics and the KPIs of the business. And the way I see a crisis is like a fire in a forest. There's a forest and has all these really big, strong trees, and there's all these weeds. And all the weeds are taking all the water and the nutrients, and you need to get this fire often, and the fire just gets all the weeds out. And some of the trees that are weak, they go under. And some of the trees, they come out a little burned or whatever, but they come out. Those are the ones that get all the water, all the nutrients, and everything back. So I was one of the weeds that I didn't have a very strong business, and I went under because I was not disciplined and I had not taken the right precautions. So the other day I was talking with an entrepreneur, and he told me, "You're the most pessimist entrepreneur I've ever talked with." And I was like, "Yeah, but my company's been in operation for 10 years, growing 30, 40% every year. And you sometimes go 50 and then lower 20, and it's just the paranoid survival."
Yeah.
So I think that whenever you're a disciplined entrepreneur, you're way more focused on your KPIs, and you always try to see where the company could be hit and be protected by that. I prefer to grow 20 a year stable than 1 year growing 40 and then 5 and then 10, and that's a lot of drama.
Yeah.
And usually, if you're like that, and you're in a weak moment and you got a crisis, you're completely gone under.
You're gone. You wiped out the, yeah.
Correct.
You made a promise to your wife after going through this major downturn and having moved back to Mexico and get a job. What promises did you make?
So I come to her and said, "Hey, we have $1 million in debt." Well, I had to pay $1 million between leases and all these kind of things. In the US, it's very common to go bankrupt, and then you go with companies and say, "Hey, the company went bankrupt, go to court or whatever." Under Mexican law and culture, we're not used to that. So I call an uncle. Everyone has a rich uncle. So I called my rich uncle and said, "I need a loan." And he lent me $500,000. I called my dad. He lent me the $500,000. I paid everything. I've never been late, even in one credit card in the US, ever in history. And I paid them both. And they gave me the money. I paid everything. And then when I got back to Mexico, I had $1 million in debt at 10% interest rate. And that's when I kind of restart. And going back to my wife. So first, I couldn't do another business at that moment. I was not comfortable with myself. Indeed, I got a lot of calls when I went under, but 3 were very important. First one was a letter from my parents. And my parents said, "There's very few moments in life that life allows you to learn fast. And today you have an amazing opportunity to learn fast, but because you're not even willing to talk about it because it's so painful, you're not learning. I think we have to put everything on the table and learn." So we hired a moderator, a consultant, and I got into a room with my parents, my wife, the moderator, and myself for 2 days. And it was rough. It was pretty rough. But we put everything on the table. They helped me analyze my life and why I put myself in danger the way I did. And that was a very important moment. Then the second call that I got that was important was a good friend of high school was the CEO of Google in Mexico. Google opened operations in Mexico for the first time in Latin America. And a friend of mine was the CEO. And then they asked him or promoted him to be head of Latin America. And he called me and said, "Hey, I just been promoted to be the head of Latin America. Why don't you become the CEO of Google Mexico?" And I was like, "I can't do that." And the guy said, "Why not?" And I said, "Because I'll be terrible." And I did not accept the job. And my friend was like, "Are you crazy? You're one of the best entrepreneurs in the country. How can you not be the CEO of Google?" And I said, "I'm sorry, I'm not ready. I don't believe in myself, so I cannot do it." Hang up the phone. He called me the next day and he said, "I don't care if you don't like it. I'm going to put your name on the hat." And then I began getting calls and went through the process. By the way, at the end, I did not get the job. I got offered the number 2 position because I did not understood the core values of Google. So they said, "We're going to put someone that has the core values of Google, and you to be the head of operations for you to run the company, but we don't want to give you the high position because you don't run with the core values. And I said, if you don't give me the number one position, I don't take it. And they said, sorry, we're not. And that was it. So I did not get the job. And then the third call was Vern Harnish, that is my partner today and mentor. Vern is the founder of EO, Entrepreneurs Organization. He wrote a book called Scaling Up. And he called me and said, hey, how are you? And I remember I blame everyone for a half hour and I complained and it was a rough call. And at the end, he said, what's next? And I was like, what do you mean, what's next? I'm going to go to Mexico, get a job. I need to pay my kids' school, and that's it. And he's like, no, you have to become a coach. You have to help entrepreneurs. And I was like, I don't trust myself to be an entrepreneur. How can I coach anyone else? And he said, that's precisely why. Because what happened to you, you have to make sure it doesn't happen again. And I said, hey, everything sounds really nice, but I need to pay for my kids' school, so I just cannot be a coach and try to make money. He said, okay, great, go and get a job, and then on the weekends, you'll start coaching. Oh, because he asked me a question. He said, how are you going to pay the $1 million that you owe? And I said, I have no idea. I was not caring about that. I was just caring how to pay for my kids' school. And he said, why don't you coach on the weekends, and with that, you pay your debt? So I said, fine. 6 months after it, I was making more money on the weekends than during the week, and I resigned to my job and then stay as a consultant. And here's when I come back to my wife. My wife, we discussed divorce many times. And by the way, when an entrepreneur goes under, a lot of them discuss divorce. Not because the love ends, but because the strain you put on your family. Today I coach a lot of entrepreneurs, and I've heard this many times. An entrepreneur goes under, and their house is mortgaged, their cars are on a lease, and all the money goes to the business. And the family feels unprotected by the entrepreneur. And then when the business goes under, then puts a lot of strain on the family. So I had really big discussions with my wife about that. I was overweight, whatever. So it took me like 5 years to pay the debt. And one day I came to my wife and said, I'm going to be an entrepreneur again. And she was like, wait. We had a really long discussion, and the agreement was, until you don't put 6 months of cash in the bank for the family, you could not start a company. Because I teach entrepreneurs that they need to have 6 months in the bank. And she has heard me teach this and have these conversations with entrepreneurs. And she said, why you do it with your clients and you don't do it with the family? And I was like, okay. So it took me another 3 or 4 months, and I put 6 months on the bank by then. So my wife said, whenever you're having issues and you don't bring money, no problem. Your kids are going to go to school. There's going to be food on the table. We're going to be a happy family. Today, we have like 3 or 4 years in that account. And by the way, that account, I could not touch it. It's under my wife's name. I put money on the bank. I could not touch the money on the bank. And believe me, my family relationship is way better today than it was then.
Well, you've got something to fight for.
Yeah. So every year we put more money, but I could not touch it. And by the way, I had times that I was not able to get money off my business for 1 or 2 months. And I came home kind of with stress and everything. And my wife said, no problem. That's what this fund is for. Fine. So that was a big agreement with the wife, and that still stays up to today.
It's kind of what my friend told me, Jack Miller, many years ago, when he told me, David, when you just go get your money, your funding from the bank, just because you have access to credit, you have a good credit score, you've shown you pay your bills, that's a lazy way to do it. Or accessing lines of credit, or just because the money's out there, it's easy to get. In this case, you made a promise, I will not touch that money, and you had, because of that, it forced you to be more creative in your approach to figure out the problem.
Correct. Indeed, stage 1 and stage 2 are companies up to, let's say, 20, 25 employees. We believe it's a big mistake to raise any money. If you raise money to buy an asset, 100%, I don't have a problem with that. That's the way it should be done. But to fund operations, I think it's a lazy way. Because instead of doing the right thing and figure out how to give value to the world, and the world pay you for the value, it's easier to convince one bank or one investor to give you money and be lazy.
Be lazy, yep.
The best way to do it is figure out how to give value to the world, and the world will give you money.
If you enjoyed watching or learning from this video, please leave a like and subscribe to my channel for more content. If you have a question about any of my content or this specific video, just please leave a comment down below. And as always, stay focused on your freedom. I'll see you next time.